Morning. He's so tall and handsome. So Sherlock Holmes and Watson went camping one time. Have you guys heard this one? Sherlock Holmes and Watson went camping, and Sherlock wakes up at 2 a.m. in the middle of the night, and he looks around, and he goes, Watson, wake up. And so Watson wakes up, he thinks it's some kind of lesson from Sherlock, right? He's like, okay, I'm going to learn something. What? And Sherlock goes, what do you notice? And Watson looks around, he says, well, I see these trees. I see the trees. Sherlock says, good. What else do you notice? He says, well, obviously the stars, the sky. There's a couple clouds. The moon is setting. He says, good. What else do you notice? And he says, you see the ground? Sherlock says, anything else? And he says, not really. And Sherlock says, well, that's the problem. Someone stole our tent. And I was thinking about that because some of you have heard me speak several times. Some of you are like, oh great, this guy again. Some of you haven't. But the thing is, I'm talking today about something I talk about all the time. So some of you might be thinking, why is Ethan talking about this again? He talked about this last time he was here, and before that. And it's because I think sometimes the most obvious things are the easiest things to miss. And so if I can do one thing today, I'd want to just hammer in this idea we're going to talk about today because it's one of the most, if not the most central part of being a Christian, okay? So we're in a series, Elliot told me we're in a series called Things I Wish Jesus Never Said, right? Have you guys been liking this series? It's an interesting title for a series, right? So the passage I chose, the thing I wish Jesus never said, you can go ahead and put up Matthew 6, is this. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. If you don't forgive other people, God won't forgive you. Seems pretty harsh, right? Because most of us want a God who forgives us, period. Right? Yes, Ethan. Yes, that's what I want. I wish Jesus never said that. Good. All right. Let's wake up a little bit. Cool. Woo. Okay. If you don't forgive others, God won't forgive you. Seems harsh. It'd be easier if Jesus says, I'll forgive you no matter what. So today what I want to do is unpack this and what I think Jesus is trying to say in this verse. Okay? So first I want to tell you a story about when I lived on Cape Cod. It was my first year of college. I just graduated high school. Who's a senior in here? A couple of you. Awesome. Cool. So I just graduated from high school, and I moved across the country from here, Colorado, to Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And I lived with these two guys. One of these two guys was really cool. We got along great. He liked me. I liked him. And it was cool. The other guy was really kind of strange. He was not a Christian. And over the course of a couple months, he just kind of got meaner and meaner to me. So I was like really bubbly. I was probably really annoying to him. And like he'd come home after work, and I'd be like, hey, Josh, how was work? And he'd be like, shut up. And then he'd watch Family Guy until like midnight and then fall asleep on the couch. So he's just not a healthy guy, not super friendly, not the nicest guy ever. And he also made a lot of money at his job. So what he tried to do was kind of solve his happiness problem by buying nice things. So he had nice clothes, he had a ton of DVDs. You guys remember DVDs? And he had a giant screen TV. He had like all this nice stuff, right? So that's Josh, this mean roommate of mine. One week, a family from church asked me to house sit for them. So I was like, of course, I'll go house sit. And I don't know why, I don't remember what I was thinking at this time, but I remember I wanted to pack up everything I own and move it to this family's house for a week. I don't know why. So I moved everything except for my mattress into this family's house that I was house sitting for a week. And obviously Josh then asked me why. He's like, why are you moving all that stuff out? You're just going to be back here in a week. And I was like, I don't know, man. I just want to get out of your way. I just want to pull all my stuff out. Whatever. And that was that. So I'm house sitting for this family, and a couple days later, I get a text from my nice roommate, and it says, hey, Josh just burnt down the apartment building. And I was like, what? Is this real? And so I was like, what? What are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, Josh was trying to make fried Oreos, and the oil caught on fire and instantly spread through all the kitchen, and he tried to put it out by dumping milk on it. And if you know anything about oil fires, they get worse when you put liquid on them, especially milk, which has lots of sugars and fats. And so he burned down the entire apartment building. Josh lost his TV, his DVDs, and his nice clothes. I only lost my mattress. And something wrong with this mic? That's better. And so they lost everything. I only lost my mattress, and that was that. So then they had to move in a house paid for by insurance, where the two of them lived with the lady who lived above us in the apartment building, and it was really strange. Whereas I found a different apartment. Well, any of that. Anyway, the point of that story is that's what we always want to happen to the people that are mean to us, right? Like someone does something terrible to you, they treat you terribly, and God burns down their apartment, right? We're like, yes. Oh, it's so satisfying. Because that's like the human response, right? You do something mean to me, I want God to just like strike you with lightning. Boom, problem solved. But that's usually not the way the world works. I just got really lucky. And there's a quote from a TV show I like, which you should never watch, and it's from Bobby Axelrod. He says, hate is the world's most renewable resource. Hate is the world's most renewable resource. What he means is that, like, the human condition, it's easy for us to just generate hatred. It's easy for us to hold on to grudges. Someone does something wrong to me, I'm going to be angry at them, I'm going to stay angry at them until God burns down their apartment building, right? Hate is the world's most renewable resource. Therefore, when Jesus comes in and tells us to forgive one another, he's essentially telling us to go against every human impulse that's inside of us. Forgiveness is hard. There's another story by a guy named Ernest Hemingway. Anyone ever read Hemingway? You guys have to read him for school, the seniors? Yeah. Isn't he great? Yeah.
No.
Hey, I don't like that tone. You'll appreciate him when you're older. So Ernest Hemingway has this story called The Capital of the World. And in it, there's a boy named Paco. And we never learn what exactly Paco did, but Paco did something bad so that his father kicks him out of the house. And this takes place in Spain, in Madrid. And so Paco's dad kicks him out of the house, and Paco runs away from home. A few days later, the dad's like, oh, what did I do? My son is gone. I shouldn't have kicked my son out. And so he goes looking all over Spain. He can't find his son, Paco. He's looking all over. He can't find Paco. So finally one day, he goes back to Madrid, and he starts putting signs up all over the town. And they say, Paco, meet at Hotel Montaña, noon Tuesday. All is forgiven, Papa. He puts these signs up all over Madrid, the entire city. Paco, meet me at this hotel, noon Tuesday, all is forgiven. So the father shows up on Tuesday at noon, at the hotel, and he finds police outside, and they're surrounding this giant group. And he goes in, and he's like, what's going on? He finds out that there's 800 boys named Paco that have shown up at this hotel because they thought the sign was for them. And it's funny kind of at first, but then you think about it and you realize the world is starving for forgiveness. The world is starving for forgiveness. If there's one thing that I think every human wants, it's to be forgiven. It's that we know that there are things that we've done wrong, things that we could have done better, and we're starving to be forgiven by a loving Father who's coming after us, looking for us. Just like we sang in that song, God won't stop climbing up mountains and coming after us and chasing after us to forgive us. And that's something each and every one of us is starving for, right? So what is forgiveness? Someone wrongs you, someone bullies you, someone does something awful to you. And forgiveness, I think the best definition I have is just letting it go. It's when you don't hold it against them. It's when you don't say, I'm going to do something equally bad to them. You say, I'm just going to keep loving them. Now, side note, forgiveness does not mean you have to be best friends with this person. If someone's bullying you, you can forgive them without necessarily having to be their best friend, right? It might not be healthy to hold on to those like unhealthy relationships, but forgiveness means that I'm still going to try to love them as best as I can in whatever situation this looks like, and it's not going to be fair. Forgiveness is not fair. We often think that if I forgive them, then something should happen to like right the wrong and solve the equation, but that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness isn't an equal equation. Like in algebra, you make it equal on both sides. That's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is like wiping the slate clean, saying I won't hold this against you. Even though I have the right to, even though you've wronged me, I can let it go, and I can still love you. So let's think about a little bit of math. Speaking of math, a little bit of math. How many of you think that you're good people? One. A couple of us. Okay. So a good person, let's say on average, and this isn't me, I'm way worse than this, but a good person, let's say they do 3 sins per day. Okay? A good person, they do 3 sins, like someone cuts them off in traffic, and they say, oh, I hate that person. 1 sin, right? 3 of those per day. A pretty good person, just 3. So if you do 3 sins and you live for 80 years, let's figure out how many days are in 80 years. So in 80 years, you have 29,200 days. So you multiply that by 3 sins a day, and you end up doing 87,600 sins in your lifetime. And that's a pretty good person. This isn't even a bad person. This is a pretty good person, right? So you do 87,600 sins in your lifetime as a pretty good person. Do you still feel like that's a very good person who's done that many sins in their life? No. The story of the Bible is that God is chasing after us, and he has taken all 88,000 of those sins and destroyed them and wiped the slate clean, right? You think of it in terms of we have a debt of 88,000 sins that 88,000 times we've wronged God, and he just takes it. Jesus dies on the cross, destroys those sins, and says, no, I'm going to forget about them. Clean slate, right? That's pretty good news, right? That we're forgiven for all those, and this is a good person. I've probably done a lot more sins than this, not even 80. But that's pretty good. Okay, so Jesus tells a story in Matthew 18. And I need 3 volunteers, because I think this story is best illustrated when you can kind of see it acted out in front of you. So I need 3 volunteers. Who's good at acting?
I am.
Okay, Levi.
Drama.
Drama. What's your name? Kaya, come on up. And one more. Okay, what's your name? Jason, come on up.
Bring the hat.
Jason.
Bring the hat. Okay.
Bring the hat. Bring the hat. Okay, so we have these 3 people. Okay, so in this story, Kaya is 2019. Okay, so Kaya is a CEO, and Kaya's the CEO. She's multi-millionaire, super rich, very powerful, tons of money. Okay, Jason is a manager who works for her. Okay, so he's obviously like working for her. He's under her, but Levi works under Jason. Make sense? So boom, boom, boom. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, a couple years go by. She has lent him a bunch of money. Okay. It ends up being millions of dollars. He owes her millions of dollars, but he has a gambling problem. He can't get his money together. He's like, uh-oh, what am I going to do? So one day, Jason goes to Kaya, and he says, I need you to do begging impression, okay? Please, CEO Kaya, please, can you forgive my debt? Please, I can't pay you back. I know come on, where's the acting? There it is. Good acting. Please forgive my debt, please. And she says, you know what, I have multi-millions of dollars. Sure, I'll forgive you. He says, thank you. All right, great. Good. So he goes free. He's been forgiven millions of dollars of debt. That's a lot of money. Okay? Now, down the road, Levi also owes Jason $20 for lunch last week.
No.
You owe him $20, but you're also very poor. You have a spending problem. So you have to go to him and say, please forgive me my $20.
Please forgive me my $20 that I got.
Good? I'm not sure what those words were, but you get the idea. I can't pay you back. Please forgive me my debt. But this time Jason says, no. No, you need to pay me back, and I will hold it against you until you pay me back every penny of those $20.
No.
Now let me ask you a question. How do you think Kaya, CEO multimillionaire Kaya, will respond when she hears that he couldn't even forgive this $20 debt after she had just forgiven him millions of dollars of debt? How do you think she's going to feel? What'd you say?
Me?
Yeah.
I said execution.
Yeah, she's going to be heated. So she says to him, I just forgave you millions of dollars, and you can't even forgive this guy $20. Say that. Drama time.
I just gave you $100 and I am so confused where you can't just forgive that guy.
Good. So she says, you will go to debtor's prison until you can pay back every penny of my multi-millions. So now she flips. She says, because you couldn't forgive him, you now owe me your millions of dollars.
Because you couldn't pay him, you now owe me millions of dollars.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, give it up for our actors.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys. So do you understand the idea here? If we each have a debt to God of 88,000 sins or dollars, and he has forgiven that, he wiped our slate clean, what right do we have to turn to say a bully bullies us a couple times a week, right? He's really bad, a couple hundred times he's hurt us or wronged us. I'm not saying that's not real, but I'm saying that in light of the 88,000 times we've hurt God, if we can't turn around and forgive this debt, then what right do we have being forgiven by God? Let me put it a different way. The amount to which we can forgive other people, so let's say that I have someone bullying me. The amount that I can forgive him is a direct reflection of how much I see I've been forgiven by God. Are you with me? Okay. The amount to which I can forgive other people shows how much I realize I've been forgiven. There's another verse in Luke 7:47. It's easy to remember because it's like an airplane. He says, he who has been forgiven much loves much, but he who has been forgiven little loves little. And when I was growing up, I would read this verse in the Bible, and I thought, okay, so there's some people that have done a lot of sins, and there's some people that have not done as many sins. And I realized as I got older, that's not all what Jesus is saying here. He's saying the more you realize you've been forgiven, because each of us are equally sinful. You can say that, right? Each of us has done just, pretty much the same amount of sins. We've each hurt God equally. The more I realize that, the more I'll be able to love other people. But if you hold on to this idea that I'm a pretty good person, I don't really need to be forgiven, no big deal, I'm pretty good, I can get by on my own, then you're also going to love other people very little. Because you have very little forgiveness you've received, therefore you have very little forgiveness to give others. Are you with me? The more we realize that we've been forgiven a lot, the more loving we'll be to other people. So going back to that original verse, if you can't forgive others, then God won't forgive you. I think what he's really saying is, it's like a sign, right? Like, forgiveness is a sign of how much you've been forgiven. Are you with me? I don't want to feel like it's a lot of complicated words. If you can't forgive other people, that just shows that you have not been forgiven. You haven't received this huge forgiveness from God. Make sense? So there's a story in the news this week that really illustrated this. And I was listening to a news podcast, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. It's like when God just hands you a story to use in your message. I was like, perfect. It's actually kind of a sad story, but it has a really beautiful ending. So about a year ago, there was a white police officer named Amber Geiger, and she came into an apartment building and goes into her apartment, and she sees a black man in there. She's a white police officer, and she sees a black man in her apartment, so she pulls out a gun and shoots him, and he dies. But then later, she realizes she wasn't in her apartment, she was a floor above her apartment, and somehow had walked into his apartment and thinking it was her own, right? So she walked into to this guy's own apartment. He was just in his own apartment chilling, and she killed him. And it was a really strange case, and they were like, well, what do we do? Because it was like accidental. She didn't mean to go murder this guy. So the trial took place over the past year, and just this past week, she was sentenced to 10 years in jail. And what was really powerful was the guy, the one who was murdered, his name is Botham, and his brother had made a statement on the stand. And the reason I think it's so powerful is because, for one, he's a Christian. He says that in the video I'm going to show you. And you can tell that he is someone who realizes he's been forgiven a lot. Therefore, even though this woman has done something so terrible, she's taken his brother away from him, even though it was an accident, he's still able to turn to her and say, look, I've been forgiven a lot, therefore I can forgive you as well. The source of his forgiveness is the forgiveness he first received from God. Make sense? So let's look at the video, and then I'll wrap it up.
I can speak for myself. I forgive you. And I know if you go to God and ask him, he will forgive you. And I don't think anyone could say it. Again, I'm speaking for myself, not even bad for my family. But I love you just like anyone else. And I'm not gonna say I hope you rot and die just like my brother did, but I personally want the best for you. And I wasn't gonna ever say this in front of my family or anyone, but I don't even want you to go to jail. I want the best for you. Because I know that's exactly what both of them would want you to do. And the best would be give your life to Christ. I'm not gonna say anything else. I think giving your life to Christ would be the best thing that both of them would want you to do. Again, I love you as a person. And I don't wish anything bad on you. I don't know if this is possible, but can I give her a hug, please? Please?
Yes. So you can tell that he's somebody who has received the love of God, he's received the forgiveness of God, and that's how he can turn to the woman who murdered his brother and give her a hug, and forgive her. He turns and gives the forgiveness he's received to her. And some of you might be here today and you've never thought about this forgiveness from God. You're like, nah, God can never forgive what I've done. I'm too bad, I'm too dirty. Nobody knows the things I've done. And the thing that I want to tell you today is if you've never tasted that forgiveness, if you've never received that, you've never prayed for Jesus to say, look, I forgive you. You're welcome into my family. I'm going to forget all the thousands of things you've done to hurt me. because I just want to give you a hug. I just want to love you. If that's you and you've never received that, I would encourage you. We're going to have a song of reflection, a song where you can just sit. I encourage you to sit in silence